Fire Emblem Three Houses is a bit like the Chris Chan documentary, in that it's both addictive and kind of questionable, but I'm in too deep to back away from it. There were a lot of great games I played through during the early stages of lockdown. Some I had put off for years, waiting for the right moment to experience them, while others were old favorites that gave some comfort during those stressful months. But few were as consistently present as this tactical RPG about warring kingdoms, religious subjugation that's also just a tea drinking simulator. It remains the most played game on my Nintendo Switch, and I even got the collector's edition after buying it digitally because, you guessed it, I'm a weeb. The odd thing is that you can't really give Three Houses an elevator pitch. There's no immediate hook to its gameplay. In fact, it can be incredibly boring at first glance. You're limited to a specific frame of time for main objectives, there's classes to attend, and a string of mundane tasks like gardening that you're locked into when you just want to go ride dragons. Why would anyone play this? Well, much like Persona 5 and Animal Crossing, the super systematic approach lends itself to a constant intrinsic motivation. You only get as much out of the upgrades as you put into them. It's this rare lightning in a bottle that intelligence systems captured along with 3 million copies sold worldwide, currently ranking as not just the best-selling entry in the series, but also in the top-selling games on the Switch in general. Now, you can pull back and point to a lot of these specific circumstances as valid reasons for why this game took off in the way that it did, but so much of what makes Three Houses special to so many people, myself included, is these characters. What at first comes off as a simple stereotype are slowly revealed over the course of a 60-hour playthrough to be more fleshed out, and oddly comforting seeing them open up to the many support conversations with the extended cast, a good portion of which you might miss out on that first round. Like, there's this critical moment during White Flower where they straight up ask you to pick a side, and it basically goes, hey, wanna side with the church? We have cake. Or counterproposal,
no thanks, bro.
I'll ride or die with my Black Eagle crew cause ain't no Catholicism in our class. Plus we have My Chemical Romance and Bernie. You have Flane. Those things are not comparable. All of this came from that first playthrough, only for this to be flipped on its head for my second round with the Blue Lions, and would have a much better understanding of its mechanics, let me engage more with other characters I initially dismissed. Which is class. That's something I always find across a lot of my favorite pieces of media, where each time you engage with it, something new comes out of it, whether it be minor or major. And despite covering similar story beats, there's this natural quality to the game which goes beyond its many subsystems that makes you want to see beyond what you first engaged with. And what makes it fun was seeing that same process happening to different people. Some like the goofballs which make up the Golden Deer class, others got into the dual-sided nature of Dimitri's story arc, and probably that one person who likes Flane. There's someone here for you to connect with. And that's how this tactical RPG bypassed all my preconceptions to shoot its way up into my list of favorite games of all time. Maybe it was seasonal, but after facing down that final dragon, I was wondering if that feeling would ever be recaptured. Maybe all that could be done was rewatching the character compilations on YouTube. That was until Intelligent Systems and Omega Force put their heads together and decided, what if we made another Warriors spin-off?
Whatever.
If Three Houses served as baby's first tactical RPG, Fire Emblem Warriors Three Hopes provides that same opportunity as my first step into the fabled yet also niche Musou genre, which was born from the Dynasty Warriors series by the previously mentioned Omega Force in the late 1990s. Originally built as a weapon-based fighting game akin to Soul Calibur, but through a switch to a more hack-and-slash style of gameplay quickly drew in a much larger, more dedicated audience. And that's because its appeal came in how easily transferable the formula was. The design philosophy shared across Hyrule Warriors, Samurai Warriors, Pirate Warriors, and of course, Persona 5 Strikers, is fighting off hundreds of enemies in a single battle from multiple different sides, coupled with a light RPG element and a large scale. It is the video game equivalent to that chapter of Berserk where Guts fights 100 men, and Omega Force looked at that and thought, what if there was more?
Like, three or four times, maybe.
Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Free Hopes falls under this banner by immediately taking the canon timeline and throwing it all into a blender, in the process speeding through all the setup to put the characters into their new attire, as well as the new gameplay structure, that gives you the map of Fodlan with the progression unlocking more areas until the major battle for the chapter is complete. Right off the bat, you'll probably notice the much quicker pace as it funnels you through tutorials and key relationships, so if you don't know your symbols from your battalion units, you're probably gonna be lost, but it does feel more catered to fans like myself who already have a grasp on how this all works. Of course, being a Black Eagle stan, I obviously went with the Scarlet Flame route, and I'm happy to see that their fashion sense hasn't been lost in the switch between developers. If you've watched my Arcane video, which I'm gonna assume most of the new people here have, so hi. Character design is something that can either elevate or severely hamper a story's appeal. And for the most part, these newer designs work as this in-between stage that acts like the connective tissue between both the original and timeskip designs. The most memorable always had these visual signifiers which made them stand out, whether it was the soft earthly colors of Mercedes which complement her motherly demeanor, or the more direct, like Rhea's regal robes hiding her vicious, power-hungry ideals for a warm, delicate smile. In broad strokes, what makes each member distinguishable is there, just a bit leaner. Like with Bernadetta, for example, it falls in this sweet spot between her almost normal appearance while also not fully reaching that threshold and keeping that fuzzy hermit look indicative of her first appearance, showing that there's still a lot more room for her to grow. It's the small yet nice flourishes like Petra's headdress or my boy Ferdinand rocking that cool jacket which injects a freshness into the familiar faces. But it's a shame when there's a few that don't really feel like they were as experimental. For example, Dorothea still looks great, but I kind of wish they could reincorporate her hat back in, as that was such a small yet recognizable part of her that it kind of feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. Keeping the focus on aesthetic changes, probably the most immediate difference comes in cutscene direction. Rather than the pre-rendered low frame rate cinematics that were washed in film grain, this change can be felt not just in the faster cuts and depth of field, but also in the intentional use of color contrast, with purple hues present in a multitude of shots while often being contrasted with the green glow of a certain character we previously controlled. It's a rivalry front and center in both the box art and narrative of our new playable character, which brings me to the main question I've been thinking about since starting Free Hopes. Does it recapture the same magic as Free Houses?
Yes, but actually no.
Well, in broad strokes, yes. If the developers can be praised for anything, it's how well they are able to replicate a series-specific aesthetic and especially the UI onto a different genre. It's one thing to bring back a well-loved character, it's another thing entirely for it to feel authentic. Everything from support conversations to cooking all the way to excursions, the core tenets are all represented here, but rather than the monastery of Garrick Mach, this base camp takes over this position where you can train and level up facilities to improve your resources. While the rundown look does feel appropriate for the different circumstances, it lacks a good deal of the personality and notable geography that despite its smaller size, I frequently found myself using fast travel to jump around the short distance rather than going by foot. This also extends to the combat itself. It can be fun to build up a massive combo followed by a team-up attack to counter special enemy types, but most of the time your main character has hit a power level so high that you don't really need to worry about your other units, which robs some of the strategy from the encounters. It's certainly present with the side missions and type advantages to take into consideration, but you don't come to this game for the deep combat system, rather the pure sensation of being a bowling ball knocking down pins. And when coupled with that new score that makes old songs hit harder than ever before, it can be immensely satisfying. Through all these changes, both big and small, there was only one thing I was really coming to this game for. Like I said back at the start, these characters are the draw for me. There's an odd comfort you get reuniting with familiar faces akin to Mass Effect. If you like spending time with your companions, this has you covered. A standard playthrough will probably last around 20 hours excluding side missions, and being a what-if scenario gives a lot more leeway for potential meetups and conversations which wouldn't have been possible in the original. In all this time, I find it difficult to really describe why these games scratch a certain itch, and the conclusion I've come to is that they are the equivalent to comfort food. It's not the deepest or most fulfilling of its kind, but it is without a doubt effective. Considering this might be the closest we'll ever get to a proper sequel, and it doesn't retroactively ruin any of the cast's personality, it serves as an invitation to spend more time with these people you've gotten to know, even if it's not as refreshing or potent as the first go-around. I find Free Hopes to be the companion piece which complements what was already great rather than taking it away. I've barely scratched the surface on what these games have to offer, and I'm still excited to dive back in. Whether it's with deers, lions, or eagles, there's more than enough here to keep me engaged to see what comes next, and I think in its own way, that's kind of the magic of Free Hopes.
I am here to kill Mr. Fukushima.
You have Uno!
I don't fucking have Uno, motherfucker.
Go to the arcade and you'll be able to download it for free, you dumb motherfucker! It's a fucking card game! They don't even charge people!